see you again. I'm here, Nick Brana, the National Chair of the People's Party, for the second episode of the People's Podcast. And I'm here with our guest, Garland Nixon, also Karen and Sabria on our national team. And so if everybody wanted to say a little bit about themselves, I think it would be a great way to start. We started that way last time, and I think it was awesome. Garland, did you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Garland Nixon, and kind of a weird background, but I do radio now. I'm a journalist. I do a lot of radio. I do radio in Washington, D.C. and for Radio Sputnik. I also do Pacifica. I have a show, WPFW, which is a Pacifica show in Washington, D.C., and on KPFK, which is another Pacifica station in Los Angeles. And I was a police officer and police official in Maryland. I was on the National board of directors for the American Civil Liberties Union for many years, and kind of here I sit.
And Garland, I love your radio show in the area too, and I know so many of us in the DC area do. So it's great to have you on.
Thank you.
And Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, although I didn't really want to follow Garland, but sure. Not nearly as interesting or impressive, but yeah, I've been with the People's Party for about a year and a half. I am on the Central Committee. I'm also the vice chair of Massachusetts. And yes, here I sit. Ready to engage in some stimulating conversation.
Awesome. And Sabria?
So I live in Texas, and I'm with the People's Party. I'm in the Central Committee, and I'm also a teacher. And I love to write, read, and talk politics.
All right. So today we're going to discuss, we're going to talk about, and first I really ought to say, okay, so everybody should watch the People's Podcast on YouTube. We're really trying to build up our YouTube channel. We're also going to try to connect it to Rofkin and Rumble too, so that we're not reliant entirely on Google. We're going to be clipping the different topics that we talk about also. We're doing it bi-weekly now. We're about to move to doing it weekly also. So, and there's also going to be an audio version that's going to be on Anchor. So thanks to everyone who's tuning in all those different places. So today we wanted to talk about something I've seen you talk a lot about, Garland, recently, and I loved your commentary on it. And that's this incredible, audacious, idiotic, suicidal warmongering between the United States and China that the U.S. is provoking, because apparently it isn't enough to provoke war with one nuclear power, as a dying empire. And so, Garland, I wanted to, and there's been so many developments, right? Since Pelosi's visit. Since Pelosi's visit, it's only accelerated. I mean, China did the military drills surrounding Taiwan. They responded decisively. The U.S., of course, sent another congressional delegation, to make sure that China understood that it wasn't a fluke, because their whole argument, the White House's whole argument was that, oh, this is just Pelosi, it's a fluke, we're not really on board with this. And then another congressional delegation goes. Like, don't give me that bullshit. I think that totally dispels that for anybody who believed that. Like, and so, like, I wonder, Garland, how do you see this, and where do you see it going?
A couple of things. Number one, I think it is further evidence that the government of our country is fully disconnected, fully decoupled from the people, fully decoupled from any concern about their constituents. At this point, we've got these people who are, whatever terms you want to use, neoliberal, global, whatever word you need to define them, but we all know who they are and what they're doing, and we ain't involved in their decision-making process. That's the important part. And so they're on this kind of ideological crusade to go around the world and try to hold on to something that which is they see as unipolar hegemony. We run the world, everybody has to do what we say, and doggone it, we're going to hold on to it. And what they're doing also, it's the old kind of little girl who killed the bunny, where, you know, her parents gave her bunny and they get to the store, here's a bunny, they hand her the bunny, and she, oh, I love this bunny, and she's in the car and she hugs the bunny and hugs it, and when she gets back, the bunny's dead. She loved it so much she squeezed it to death, right? She killed it if trying to hold on to it. And that's what they're doing with their unipolar moment. They're making it go away faster, in that they're trying to hold on to it so tight, and it's like obvious that they can, that it's gone. I'll end up by saying this on this particular issue. I think luckily what we saw with China is China and Russia both realize what's going on. It's simple. They are rising economically. They're getting economically more powerful. They're getting diplomatically more powerful. They're getting militarily more powerful. And the U.S. says, why, if we were to get more powerful, we dominate you. So you're getting more powerful. You know, we're projecting onto them that they would be as crappy as we are, that they would be as irresponsible with power as we are, right? So our people are looking at them with that fear. We can't let them pass us. And they realize that time is on their side. So we're throwing out the bait saying, fire some missiles, attack. We want to get in a war with you. And they're saying, we don't need to do that. All we got to do is sit and wait. Your economy and everything else is collapsing of stupidity, and ours is getting better. Sorry, you're not going to bait us into a fight. I'm convinced now that Russia and China have made a decision. They will not be baited into a fight with these neocons. They're going to ride this thing out because they know a year or so from now, yeah, come on, how's Europe really going to make it through this winter? And once they don't make it through the winter, how is this U.S. coalition going to hold together? All they got to do is trade space for time, and things are going to work out to their benefit. So if we don't attack Russia and China, I'm convinced at this point that they're going to hold back and say, we're not going to get into a fight. You can cross every red line you want. You ain't baiting us in, which I think is good because that will kind of save humankind.
Yeah. Sabria, you're actually studying global military history, right? You're getting your master's in it?
Yes. I think just going back to what Garland said, warfare, I think the U.S. has warfare as far as, you know, carpet bombing, military attack. But from reading from one of my favorite books is The Art of War by Sun Tzu, written about 5,000 years ago, about the beauty of defense, offense, etc. And obviously our neocon politicians don't read any strategy. A lot of them are probably thinking that China is weak because, you know, they claim that Taiwan it's China, it's the one China policy that we also, even our State Department accepts that. But when Nancy Pelosi goes there, does her little thing, China doesn't attack. So I think a lot of them are thinking, wow, we showed them, we're so tough. But China is not going to attack. China is not going to attack militarily. That's not how they do business. They're going to attack on every other different way. And they have said it. It's going to be economic. It's going to be gradual, but it's going to be slow but sure. It's already started. They've started retracting funds from our treasury bonds, our federal treasury bonds. Chinese students and Indian students are the number one international students that we have in this country, and they don't get federal student loans or aid because they are not U.S. citizens. So they pay full price for the tuition in the United States. Chinese students every year they're decreasing because they don't want to come here anymore, and now even less. So this is Russia was a fiasco. China is a fiasco, and you're right, Garland. Russia and China are not going to take the bait. You know, they're not silly. They're not immature, like the little kids that we have running our government.
That's such a good point, though, Sabria. You know, Caitlin Johnstone wrote this article recently that I really loved. And it was titled, "When are Russia and China going to start demanding to speak to the real leaders of this country?" And so her point was that Biden and U.S. presidents aren't the real leaders. They're just puppets. You know, they're just figureheads. And she used this example that Putin stated once in an interview, how Putin negotiated a kind of de-escalation with George Bush in 2004, and they made all these agreements, and then afterwards there was zero follow through from the United States. We've seen how so clearly that was because the deep state, the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, the military-industrial complex, the Pentagon, all of them, they don't want that. That's not what suits them. The military contractors, they don't want de-escalation. They make money off of continued conflict. As Julian Assange said, the goal isn't to win the war necessarily. It's to have an endless war, because that's where all the money comes from. That's how you ramp up nationalism and jingoism in the country. Use that to suppress domestic dissent. So that gives what they want. But when are these leaders, I wonder, going to start calling that out to a greater degree, or asking, to speak to leaders, not even recognizing the kind of head jokes that we have always leading this country?
I just wanted to also point out one quick observation, when this whole thing started, because I remember, and if I'm wrong, please someone correct me, but when Trump was in office, right, didn't he catch a lot of hell for daring to call Taiwan? Wasn't that a thing? So people freaked out over that. Nancy Pelosi then takes a field trip and goes there, and suddenly that's fine. And if you dare to criticize that, well, that's a problem. And that, I think, also just speaks to, it's when the Democrats do it, or if the Democrats are flirting with war, the anti-war movement we've seen historically, pretty much disappears if it's a Democrat administration, right? So Trump can't make a phone call to Taiwan, but Nancy Pelosi takes a field trip. And then there's a second delegation led by Ed Markey, which, I'm sorry, I'm from Massachusetts. That was especially infuriating to me, because he's someone that, he was a supporter of Alex Morris, and he also, was a backer of Bernie. Right. And we were supposed to be under the impression that he was this progressive anti-war. Well, that just went to hell in a handbasket. I
remember that, Bernie revolution, they were all behind him.
Yeah, and Bernie, we know, has been radio silent, right, on this whole thing. So, which I don't think any of us are surprised about at all. But it's just, going to show that it really sort of starts to get into that, what feels like political team sports, right? When we do it, it's okay. When we do it, it's not fascism. When we do it, it's not warmongering.
Yeah, that's why I kind of refer to these two parties as brainwashed cults, because that's all they are. They're just a couple of cults, and they're brainwashed in whatever they're told on any given day. And if that 180s tomorrow, it doesn't matter, because this is my cult, and my cult is doing the right thing. Where's Xi Jinping now? Where's he traveling? Saudi Arabia. Why? What has happened? The Russians have recently said, the Russians and the Chinese have recently said, we're going to create a new currency, international currency. And they didn't have to say to compete with the US dollar, because that goes unsaid. And it's going to be based on a basket of currencies. Now, imagine the top 3 oil producers each year is the US, Russia, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia apparently wants to get into the BRICS now. They want to get involved. They want to get involved in the Russia, China, India, etc. So if in fact, now let me add this, and what gives the dollar its real horsepower? Saudi Arabia only accepts dollars for oil in the petrodollar. Well, if they decide that they're going to be part of this new currency, I suspect they're going to accept this new currency, right? Which means, I'll put it like this: the day it goes on sale, I don't know about you. I want to buy some of it because it's not going to be the U.S. dollar is based. What is it backed by? Magic, derivatives, asset-backed securities. Even when you know what those things are, you still don't know what they. I know what they are, but I don't know what they are. The people who are don't know what they make them don't know what they are. It's magic. So I think what we're looking at is the U.S. in that. Come on, diplomacy. We got Tony Blinken. We don't do diplomacy whatsoever. We just do coercion and bullying and go around the world and blow people up. So the US is trying to go to the only thing it knows. We blow things up. Let's fight. Right. You guys, we're going to fight. And these other people are saying no. I mean, if self-defense, martial arts, right? Again, back to the Sun Tzu, back to that culture, winning, the art of winning without fighting, of winning every battle without having to fight. They're sitting here and they're arranging pieces on the chessboard. They're meeting. Sergei Lavrov was in Africa. He was in the Middle East. So these countries are doing real diplomacy to set up relationships with other countries, to set up to set everything up so that when they get their currency together, when they can make a move. Meanwhile, these knuckle dragging apes. And my apology to actual knuckle-dragging apes, but the knuckle-dragging apes and goons that are running this country are just running around with a blunt object saying, who can I hit with a blunt object? Mm-hmm. And it's pathetic to see, the likes of these idiots being completely outclassed by people who do diplomacy and who have a long-term vision. And that's why I think it's important, let me go here, to have other parties, to have other options in this country so people can say, well, we got these people who are only concerned with what they can make in the next quarter and what they're told to do, as opposed to other parties who are saying, let's first at least consider what the people need before we even get to what the average person wants. Let's get to the basics of what they need. And then we can start talking about foreign policy.
Exactly. I also, can't help but feel like a lot of this is such a clever sort of distraction, right, from the fact that the Democrats are doing a complete shit job, and we're like, it feels like we're circling the drain. So it's like, well, okay, here's a distraction with Nancy going to Taiwan, or just here, we've sort of been cycling through these crises, right, where it's like, let me, don't look here, look over there, to take your attention off the day-to-day misery, which I think the American people have gotten exceptionally good at normalizing, because it is in fact the norm, right?
I mean, the rebuttal that the empire always brings up to this, is that in our media and from these two corporate parties that you called out, Garland, we're always given the impression that of American exceptionalism, and that this is somehow benefits the United States. So there's this implicit, kind of understanding, woven throughout our culture with, even films like and popular propaganda like Top Gun, that the United States, American supremacy is for the good of the world. We know that's not true, as you pointed out, but also that it's for the good of Americans, because, we either it's like some kind of realpolitik, we're like Trump said, we went over there, we took their oil, yeah, better we have it now. Or it's like, oh, well, the rest of the world is just so backwards, and this is the country that invented democracy, this kind of mythology that obviously is not true. And yet this country is so brainwashed. It's so like the quality of the media is so bad, and like you pointed out, Garland, they're constantly rewriting the narrative. Like, I think of it as like, there's a 2-year attention span, probably less in this country. And I think of it as like a VCR, it's constantly rewriting itself, and nothing before that exists, only that this past 2 seconds, only remember that. Don't remember what we told you before, because we, oftentimes we contradicted ourselves. you know, in the past. And so what have we gotten? What has this empire gotten us? You know, are actual working people benefiting from this? No. We have one of the highest rates of and incarceration and poverty and infant mortality in this country, which if you consider, you know, overall GDP, or if you consider, you know, average wealth, you know, because it's so skewed with those CEOs and the Waltons and all those people up at the top, the, you know, 0.0001%, the Zuckerbergs and Bill Gates and, you know, those people, if you consider that, this is the richest country in the world. But then if you look at the distribution of the wealth, none of that stuff's going to us. You know, none of the fruits of that war, constant warmongering or empire, the 1,000 military bases we have all around the world, none of that benefits the people of this country. The people of this country, in fact, the fact that we have that creates that it makes it so important that elites and supranational corporations control, we know, the vice grip, the political system, so that in fact you only get two political parties. You know, you have no, they're both controlled by Wall Street. You have, as George Carlin said, you know, monopolies and oligopolies to choose for in every industry. You don't have meaningful choice in anything. You know, why is that? Because this country is the global hegemon. Because corporations internationally and Wall Street know that by controlling the political system of this country and keeping working people beaten down to a point where working 2, 3, 4 jobs constantly, working 100 hours a week, you know, they can't just, they don't have any disposable time or attention to give to the issues that are happening in this country or internationally. That's the formula for maintaining control of the political system in this country, which in turn translates into maintaining control of the global capitalist empire. And so the empire is actually key to the political suppression and oppression in this country of working people. And that's why it's so important to dismantle it. And this is such a big point of disagreement, obviously, between us as the People's Party and the Democratic Party, because the price of admission into the Democratic Party is that you accept the empire, you accept the war industry, you buy it. Even the most progressive ones of them, Bernie Sanders, on board with the F-35 program in his district since forever. You know, AOC, Ilhan Omar, all the rest of them voting, you know, for supporting sanctions, supporting, you know, 54 billion while people are starving in this country, sending baby formula while people don't have baby formula in this country. You know, so the empire, that is an ultimate mythology, I feel, that has to be taken on. The empire does not benefit. It doesn't benefit this country or the working people of this country. Only people who reap anything from it are a small number of military contractors and the members of Congress who sign off on those programs.
Yeah, and you know, Sabria, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say that when you think about the millions of people that China has lifted out of poverty in maybe 30 years, and we talk about us being the wealthiest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, you name it. But we have homelessness, it's increasing. There are children who go to bed hungry. You know, there's veterans, they go to fight these wars and they've lost a limb. You see that where I live in Houston. It's just too much to you even comprehend that you're sending these people to fight these wars that you glorify, and when they come back with a limb missing, you don't take care of them. They have to sit on the street and beg on a wheelchair. You know, it's unbelievable. Do you think people like there are soldiers like that in China or Russia? No. And the second point is, I find it more and more disgusting that somebody like Nancy Pelosi, what she did, or what they did in the Middle East, they go to a different part of the world to plunder the resources and to subjugate the people there. They have no idea what the culture is, what the language is, what the religion is, what the system is. Nothing. They just decide, you know, they have it, we want it, let's go. Let's just bomb them. So it's complete disregard for the other countries that they're going to invade. If I remember correctly, when they were invading the Middle East, I think I heard Hillary Clinton say one time that they didn't even know the difference between the Kurds and the Sunnis and the Shias. It's because they don't want to know. They don't care. They want the resources. Right now, do they care what the Chinese culture is, what their mentality is? No, they don't. They want Taiwan. They want the semiconductor industry. It's like that with everything. It's not just military industrial complex. It's also racism. It's extreme racism.
You know, and I think something that you were talking about, I'd like to comment on a few minutes ago, Nick, too. That great comment, Sabria. And that is, you were saying that the empire doesn't benefit us. But, you know, I'll argue to this. It's worse than that. It's not only there was a time, because, you know, you're right. What happened with an empire? The empire was going out, and you have bananas in this country, and you have cacao in this country, and you have something else. And the U.S. is grabbing all of these things and pulling it in from all. It's feeding like a parasite on all of the people around the world. And if your government decides that you want to nationalize or make a decent price off of that stuff, we overthrow the government and install some knucklehead puppet, right? Okay, that's bad enough. But now what happens when you have the rise of other countries, other world powers, a Russia, a China, an Iran, a Venezuela, you know, a Turkey? Other countries are starting to rise. Some of them have problems, but some of them are bigger than others. India, right? When you have these other countries start to rise, now this other country has options, doesn't it? This one of the countries in Africa that sells chocolate, right? The Belgians said, because the country, I think it might have been Ghana, but here's the perfect example. They grew the chocolate. Belgium buys it to make the infamous Belgian chocolate, right? And so they buy it, you know, and it's, you know, hasn't been processed yet. So the African country says, we've decided we're going to process it and then sell it to you. They'll make more money, right? Which makes sense for a country to do. They're looking out for their people. The Belgians say, nah, if you do that, we won't buy it, right? Forget it. We got to process it. You're going to make minimal money off of it. China says, we'll buy all you got. That's a problem, isn't it? That's a problem, because now the problem is they're not just dragging Chinese people out of poverty. Now they're getting African people out of poverty. They're getting South American people out of poverty. This is a problem. And now the U.S. and its vassals and its empire can't extract the wealth from these other countries. So what happens now?
That's right.
Student loans. This monster says, I can't extract the wealth from these people like I used to. Oh, well, I got to take it where I can get it. And it starts looking internally. And now we got kids 22, 23 years old with a house payment and no house. Because what is debt? It is a claim on future earnings. So now this machine has all of these kids, and it has claimed their future earnings for the rest of their life. Claim their future earnings. They can keep paying, but the value of the loans keeps increasing. So what we see the empire do now is even all of the things that they're forcing people to do, the money that that they're spending, it's turned internally. Since the monster can't feed on other people, and it's starting to feed on its own people. So now we've got a neoliberal, a bunch of oligarchs who extract the wealth from the people in our own country. And this is facilitated by the leaders of these parties, by these two parties. They couldn't do it without them. So now that's what we're at. And that's why things are going so bad, because now they're like, look at Europe. They're extracting the wealth from Europe. Europe is done. Europe is toast. They don't care. That's the idea. They're sacrificing Europe. It's like, well, before these people in Africa and everywhere had to be impoverished so we could be rich. Europe, bad news for you. It's your turn. Now you got to be impoverished to feed the empire. Oh, wait a minute. Students, 20-year-olds, your turn. It's getting desperate. And what used to be allies, people in Europe used to benefit from being part of the U.S. empire, right? France, all over Africa, when it extracted stuff from Mali, Lebanon, what did it do? It used AFRICOM, it used U.S. satellites, it used the U.S. resources to extract wealth from the people in Africa. So all of these countries, they benefited from being part of the U.S. empire, and now it's time to pay the piper, and the U.S. empire is feeding off of them and feeding off its own people. And again, that's what the People's Party is saying. These parties are facilitating the destruction of the working class in America, facilitating the destruction of our economy. And someone has to say, if you vote or if you support people, at minimum, they have to represent your basic needs before we even get to the point where you're part of the picture in, from an international perspective.
And I just want to add quickly too, not to go down a rabbit hole, but just because student debt was brought up, which I agree is just such an urgent issue, but and Nick knows this is a sticking point for me, but we talk so much about student debt, as we should, and I think we also need to be talking about medical debt, because you see people become homeless because they can't afford their chemo treatments, right? Even getting into things like credit card debt, right? Because then your hand gets forced, you have no money, so then it all goes on credit. And then that links back to being able to make a living, because how many jobs now require a credit check in order to get employment, right? If you have a low credit score, you may be passed over for a job. Well, why do you have a low credit score, right? Because you had no money and you needed to get whatever the essential was, procedure, food, whatever it's going to be. So all of this, we talk about student debt, and I feel like it encompasses so much, from medical to credit card. And then, we could get into the mortgages and what's happening to the housing market. We could talk about this all night, but I just think like it's amazing and disturbing how much everything is connected.
Yeah, it is. And Sabria, I think you wanted to bring up Iran also, and how Iran factors into this. And with this, especially with Salman Rushdie being attacked recently.
Yeah, it's very interesting what I was reading, because when something happens, I always look at like, what is the backstory? It's not just some guy who just ran on stage and started stabbing Salman Rushdie, and he claims on his Facebook profile that he's a fan of the Iran Revolutionary Guard. It just doesn't make sense. He's American. The guy is American. He was born and raised in the United States. So let's not have this thing about, he's somehow connected to Iran. He's a terrorist. No. Secondly, he's Lebanese. So originally he's not Iranian. So he did whatever he did. And then we had all this talk about, Iran is the bad guy. And this comes a few days right after it was claimed that somebody from the Iran National Guard had tried to assassinate John Bolton. Now, if that was a real story, would that die down in like 24 hours? So then we have the Salman Rushdie thing, and it was very interesting because somebody from the delegation of the Iran nuclear deal, he's a senior advisor of the delegation. He's a professor, and he comes regularly on shows like Richard Medhurst. So this professor was saying that it's interesting that just when every time, and just when we're about to come to some kind of a negotiation, boom, John Bolton is almost assassinated by Iranians, and boom, some guy who claims to say something about Iran on his Facebook profile goes and stabs Salman Rushdie. Now, the connection between Salman Rushdie and Iran, so they're trying to make it look like Iranians are trying to murder him on American soil. Oh my God, we have to go attack. It's something like that. So basically the thing is, yes, every time the United States and Iran, the US has no intentions of signing this deal, but every time they try to negotiate, something always happens. And now lately, like yesterday, I think it came out that Iran has said that they've added an extra clause in the deal that if you break the deal and you make us lose our time, then there are going to be penalties to pay. So they're doing this after years. They've been patient for years, but I just thought that was interesting to bring up that if these stories were genuine, why do they fizzle out? Why are we even talking about John Bolton's attempted assassination now?
Well, yeah. And, did you want to talk, Nick?
No, go for it, Garland, because I was just wondering, maybe you can answer this too, because I don't even know, why is the Biden administration or whoever controls, deep state even pursuing this with Iran right now, pursuing it and then sabotaging it itself? Like, yeah, what's going on there?
Well, here's the bottom line. They have absolutely no intention of doing this deal. And I would add the Biden administration and the neocons are incapable of making a deal like that, because in order to make a deal like that, you have to see the other side as human beings. You have to see the other side as somewhat equals. And because they are sociopathic narcissists that are supremely entitled, then they should be able to say and do anything they want, and Iran should just drop to its knees and say, yes, master. So they're not, it's not possible that they can get a deal with it. But I'm going to add something. This is a great conversation. We're talking about foreign policy. We're talking about Iran, etc. Somewhere you'll never see this on Nina Turner's Twitter account. Here's the thing about it. You mentioned earlier, and I'm not, I've covered Nina on my radio shows and talked extensively.
What a great
about her.
segue,
I met
Garland.
her, and I said I liked her, and I liked a lot of her policies. But you brought up something earlier. In order to get in the Democratic Party, you got to do certain things. One of them is sell your soul. But the bottom line is this: you can't touch empire. You hit the nail on the head. You can't discuss it. So Nina Turner can say you're a racist. She can say you don't love trans people. She can say something about, wouldn't it be, these tweets. What we really need is Medicare for all. Wouldn't it be great if everybody had, that kind of bull crap, right? You can just imply, oh, it would be nice if everybody had this and that, and shouldn't we have that? And why can't we have this? But what you can't do is say, we can't have anything as long as the military industrial complex is sucking us dry. You can't. Why isn't Nina Turner saying, well, wait a minute. Last June, Congress passed an act so-called to deal with China and the issue of technology, and it was $250 billion. 2 weeks ago, they just passed another one. It's $280 billion. That's over $500 billion inside of a 14-month period to so-called counter China in technology. And we already know. And what happens when that passes? What happens? Intel just said we're building a $5 billion factory in Malaysia or Indonesia or somewhere. They're going to take that money. They're going to buy back their own stock. They're not going to do R&D. They're not going to do anything. If they do, it'll be in Malaysia or somewhere where they can get cheap labor. But Nina Turner can't talk about that. And I'm not here to hate on Nina Turner. I'm here to just call it like I see it. Nina Turner, I don't dislike Nina Turner. I like her. But here is the reality. In order for her to try to get her foot in that door, she cannot touch foreign policy. She can't possibly say the important things. And here's the bottom line. Why don't we have Medicare for all? We can't get it because we're an empire. Empires can't afford it. We got to buy missiles to bomb people over here. We got $13 billion, $14 billion subs we got to build. We got all these things we got to build to try to run the world. And doing that means you can't have nice things. So if Nina Turner's really wants Medicare for all, she has to bring up the fact that, you can't spend $840 billion for the military and then and think about that, $250 billion last year, another $280 billion this year. No, that's not even in the news. Anybody can right now who's watching, go search it right now. It's called like the CHIPS Act or something. And you can't say that's $500 billion. We just cured homeless. Good news. We found the money to cure homelessness. We found the money for Medicare for all. We found the money for all the things you need. And we gave it to a bunch of big tech companies so they can buy back their own stock. That's what Nina Turner, she can just dream about. Wouldn't it be nice if we had healthcare? People had food and blah, blah, blah. But she can't say, but the reason that we don't is because it's all being pilfered. It's all being used in corruption, that we have Afghanistan, and there's a money laundering operation in Afghanistan for $3 trillion. As soon as that money laundering operation closes down, we open up another ATM in Ukraine and start, boy, we're going to do trillions of money. That's going to go through that money laundering operation. She can't talk about that at point blank. So of what value is she? Of what value is she to say, you know, Garland, Nixon, everything's falling apart, you're losing your job, your home, your family, you really got to get yourself together, without saying, but the reason is because you're an alcoholic and you need to stop drinking. You know what I mean? I'm just throwing that out. Or you're a heroin addict or something. You can't touch the foundational problems. So what good does it do to skirt around the edges all the time about, wouldn't it be nice if we had Medicare? Would it be nice, Garland, if you had a great life and family and a job, without saying you're a heroin addict? You're never going to get any of that. You know what I mean? And that's the example that I get. That's what the problem I have with Nina Turner is. It's kind of a fraud to claim that you're some kind of progressive and you're here for us and you want to skate around the edges of the problem without knowing that you better absolutely dare not touch the foundations of these, or you're out, which means you're part of the system, which means in reality, all you're doing is creating the illusion that there's a left flank in the Democratic Party, when in fact there isn't.
Yes. Absolutely. You know, and I'm going to go further than that. It's like, you know, you are a fraud as a progressive if you're in the Democratic Party at this point.
Good point.
I mean, come on. Like, at this point, the Biden administration has basically picked up all of the Trump policies and continued them or exacerbated them. And you know who else did this? Obama did this with Bush. Remember when he said he was going to end the wars? He said he was going to prosecute the torture. He said he was going to prosecute the bankers. Guess what? He even kept Bush's Secretary of Defense. He even did the Afghan surge that Bush had refused to do. So he was more warmongering, having immediately come into office. Clinton, obviously. It took Clinton to finish NAFTA. Bush Sr. started it. Took Clinton to finish. Took Clinton, a Democrat, to date the financial industry, to take apart the New Deal. That was Clinton. It takes Biden now. But if Trump was in office, the media and the like both parties, they would have absolutely screaming about how the empire is being actively dissolved by Trump because of everything that you described earlier, Garland. You know, all of the new currency being, you know, created, all of the Asian relations that are forming. But like you said, as a, you know, in the Democratic Party, it's the war industry and it's the security state industry, apparently, that they can't call out, because all of we remember the progressives back, it was about a year ago. What came out of, you know, January 6th was that even the progressives, you know, they kind of horse traded among themselves, decided who was going to vote for it, who wasn't going to vote for it. But the progressives were fundamentally on board with Jay and Moore to form yet another intelligence agency in this country, which is the Capitol Police, $2 billion to the Capitol Police, you know? And what Nina Turner was doing, and as you point out, was she wasn't calling out the war industry, you know, can't question empire, you know, but also can't question the security state industry that upholds it in this country, of which the FBI is undeniably a part. The FBI, the CIA, the NSA, these are not agencies devoted to public safety. These are agencies devoted to political suppression, political oppression, and first and foremost, among Black radicals and the Black community. As we pointed out in response to Nina Turner's response to Jimmy Dore last week, the FBI, they killed Fred Hampton. They signed off on CIA cocaine trafficking into the United States. They smeared Malcolm X, probably had something to do with his assassination. Same thing with MLK Jr. Of course, they sent him a letter telling him to kill himself. You know, this is the agency that you're defending. So I think this was the really interesting thing that was exposed in that kind of Twitter feud between Jimmy and Nina recently, is that really different philosophies of what the left is. And I don't even think you could call the left, Democrats the left, but the different philosophy there being, those who believe in working class solidarity and working with people on the right, even though you may disagree with them on many issues, when you happen to agree on something like abolishing the FBI, versus the school of thought that is the classic Democrat liberal school of thought, that is the Hillary Clinton deplorables theory. And that is that there's half the country that, I guess there's different estimates. Maybe Romney put it at 47%, but half the country about that is just irredeemably, white supremacist or racist or sexist, and you can't communicate to them. And their views have nothing to do with their socioeconomic circumstances, the way you crush them, time after time, and everything can just be chalked up to identity politics in the end. Then I think those two schools of thought were on display in that debate between Nina Turner and Jimmy Dore. And we as the People's Party fall solidly on the side that says we're building working class power and working class coalitions. If we disagree on a number of issues, fine. But if we agree on something, like, guess what? The fact that we need higher wages, better working conditions, we're going to collaborate on that. Guess what other institution has that philosophy and that mentality and has used it to become the most powerful institution of working class power in the country, in American history? Unions. Unions don't throw you out if you disagree with one kind of political, position that you have. You would never be able to form a union and come together around the things that mutually benefit you if that was your starting position, that you're automatically writing off half the workforce, half the shop as deplorables.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, one thing that I thought was really interesting about the back and forth between Nina and Jimmy, from what I saw, right, was that, she had her tweet, she had her comment, he responded to it with what I felt was just valid criticism, making an additional point. She's then the one, right, that brought race into this conversation and I actually went back and made sure that I didn't miss like something in between, because it just seemed like such a disconnect. And it seems like it's such a go-to strategy now to use something like, oh, well, you're a racist, you're a sexist, as a way to halt the conversation. There's no more discussion. If you come back again, it's just sort of further proof that you are this thing that you've just been labeled. So we don't have political discourse. We're just going to, oh, no, well, they're racist. I don't understand why race was brought into that it didn't have it, like that was not a conversation about race. We're talking about the FBI, and certainly, like you said, talking about the way that the FBI has been used to oppress Black movements and all of that. Like, you could get into something around race, but not in the way that Nina chose to use it as a smear. And then, of course, provided not one example, right? Jimmy Dore is a racist. Okay, care to elaborate? And no one, it was disappointing because it was the minority that asked for examples. Like, okay, well, you care to back this up? Or is that just the accusation that ends it? That's it, that's done, you're canceled, conversation over. Which I thought was just, it's so disappointing. The other thing too is that I didn't understand why, when you have then conservatives arriving at let's say the correct position, that the FBI, the CIA, these agencies are pretty horrific, why liberals, so-called leftists, are mocking them instead of welcoming them in. I don't understand that. That doesn't build solidarity either. It's like, no, you're actually correct on this issue. Like, thank you, come in, let's talk. I don't understand the obsession with the purity test, right? Because we have one working class, you really can't worry about if they're not woke enough or whatever, however you want to describe it, you know. And so when I look at something like identity politics, which I really think is become such a weapon used against, it's like a weapon that was from the ruling class given to the working class to just constantly perpetuate this civil war, right? You're just constantly divided, instead of uniting on the common goals, the commonalities, the common struggles, the common pain. We typically have much more in common, but no, we've sort of redefined so-called left and right, not having to do with class and economic, but rather where you stand on these cultural issues. Where do you come down on, right, like abortion or trans or, you know, whatever it is. And working with the right, I wouldn't understand, like, how is that a bad thing? If we have things that we agree on, well, there's strength in numbers. And how do you change someone's mind if you're not engaging and you're not having a conversation? If you're just casting off a whole section of people as deplorables, where's the humanity in that? You need standards, but that's not, to me, that is very anti-working class, 110%.
Well, did you want to say something, Sabrina? Here's what I'll say. A couple of things. You guys hit a lot of really good. Is somebody saying something? I don't want to.
I'm just going to say that it's nothing different than any of what the other progressives do. It's exactly the same thing. AOC, the same thing. You know, Ro Khanna's tweets make me laugh out loud because he'll say things like,
Me too.
"Oh, we need to do something about canceling student debt." You know, that's it. Well, you're the one in Congress. Why are you telling us this? So it's nothing different. But you know, one thing I want to say, what Karen was saying. You know, when we talk about they're dividing us on issues that are, you know, like abortion, on race, etc. It's interesting because I heard that in China they talk about these kind of issues of the West, and they say they don't understand because these aren't tangible issues. Like an example I heard, like, do people wake up in the morning and think, oh, I wonder what country is doing about abortion this morning? You know, like in other parts of the world, like in Asia where I come from, you wake up in the morning and you think about, like, okay, do I have enough food? Can I feed my children? Can my children go to school? These are the tangible issues that are, you know, real world issues. So yeah, they try to divide us on. I'm not saying it's not important, but what I'm saying is there are other issues. You know, as I said, there's the homelessness in this country is beyond belief for an industrialized country. So instead of talking about that, talking about, you know, non-tangible issues that we can deal with once everybody's fed and housed.
Well, I like to put it like this. You know, think of this kind of empire, think of this kind of invisible beast, right? There's this beast out here, and this is the thing that Biden is representing. He's representing this monster, this beast that that manifests itself in a couple different ways. If you look at the foreign policy of this beast, we can use the word neoconservatives. It is an aggressive, expansive, coercive foreign policy, right? Do what we say or we'll kill you. They're pure thugs, right? So that's this invisible monster, this beast, a foreign policy. It manifests itself as neoconservatism, right? Now, what about economic policy? It manifests itself as neoliberalism, right? We do austerity on the poor, tax cuts for the rich, go around the world and try to turn everyone into our, you know, look just like us and do the exact same foreign policy. So this monster, if you look at it through the lens of foreign policy, it is neoconservative. If you look at it through economic policy, it's neoliberal. But if you look at it through culture, its cultural expression is wokeness. So now its cultural expression says, wait a minute, we must redefine the left. Traditional definition of the left was what? The French Parliament. It was literal metaphors. If you sat on the left side of the French Parliament, literally sat there, you recommended the working class, you push back against the status quo. If you literally sat on the right side of the French Parliament, you supported the monarchy, you supported the status quo, right? So that's why they say, do you sit on the left, do you sit on the right? These were literal physical metaphors, but they wanted to change that. So now you say, well, you don't like unions. You are pro-war. You are not suspicious of corporate power. You are not suspicious of concentrating power into the hands of a few. But you're good with gay people or something or whatever. You've got a Black Lives Matter mask, and on one side it says Black Lives Matter, on the other side it's a rainbow flag. So now you're the left. So what this thing does culturally is it redefines the left. Anyway, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, if it's race, if it's sexual orientation, you name it, but it has to redefine the left away from economic policy. So you can, if you redefine it away, you annihilate it, you wipe it out, it's gone. That's why there is no left anymore in the Democratic Party. They've redefined it into a cultural and with very specific cultural issues. And so now they just redefined it out of existence. And that is simply an expression. Wokeness is an expression of this same invisible monster, whatever it does, that does neoconservatism, that does, and there's probably other ways we can find it. So as you said, it's a tool. It is the key of wokeness that tells you is that it is used as a blunt object. It's not you. They're not like, yes, we've got to do something to help the Black people or help the gay. It's never that. It's we must find someone, and it's generally somebody that we already hate. And we must find something that they said that we can interpret it as anti-gay, trans, whatever, and then we beat them the hell over the head with that. It's never, ever used to say, how can we address the betterment of this group? No, it's not. It is, how can we use this group as human shields so that we can do our horrible things? And when you come after us, we'll say, let's take this Black person and we'll hold him out in front here and you can beat the hell out of him for a while and then we'll move him aside and he gets nothing out of it. That's all wokeness is. It's a human shield. It is a tool, another arrow in your quiver that you can use to smite your enemies. Nothing more.
And it's such an excellent point. And I just wanted to expand on that really, really quickly, going back to something you said earlier, where it's like, you can't, like with Nina, right? She can't actually challenge the establishment and remain in the Democratic Party. That's not going to be allowed. So what can we do? So what they give you then is like, okay, well, we can't actually be anti-imperialist. We can't challenge the establishment. What you can do, we can't get rid of the oppression. We can diversify the oppression. So, it's like you want more like trans people doing drone strikes and that's supposed to mean something. More women CEOs, more. So in other words, you don't get rid of the systems or the oppression. You just put the veneer of diversity over it. And that's supposed to be some kind of leftist win. If you've got like people in the marginalized communities carrying out the horrific acts is some sort of empowerment. So I think, right, it's a complete weapon and it's such a protective shield from the establishment, from the oligarchs, the authoritarianism, because it's like, no, we'll give you this and you'll feel like you have some power. You're getting played.
And that's such a great point that you, Karen, and Garland bring up, because wokeness is never actually applied to the establishment. It's never actually applied to the Democrats, to the Republicans. I mean, I remember working on Bernie's campaign in 2016, when Hillary was running and she was portraying her as, I'm with her, vote for the woman candidate, first woman. Oh my God, that's all that matters, right? And so but I thought, like, wait a minute, isn't Hillary for rolling back basically social programs? Isn't she for warmongering with other countries? Isn't she for, $700 billion, military budgets? Isn't she for a level of, incredible poverty and homelessness in this country? Where are her platform planks on this? If you're not running against that, you're for it, And so, like, if Hillary Clinton is for all of that, well, guess what? Half the people in this country are women, a little more, 52%. So if you're for, and that affects all of them, everybody who doesn't have health care in this country, because we have this crazy healthcare system tied to employment, everybody who's homeless, everybody who doesn't have enough to eat in the richest country in the world, everybody who doesn't have enough, to afford rent. Like, that is because of the way this country is structurally economically built and the policies. And if you're running on those policies, and if you're not challenging them, and half the people who are falling prey to those policies are women, how can you call yourself a feminist candidate? How can you call yourself a pro-woman candidate? The same thing applies to Latinos and Black people. How can you do that? If 13% of Americans are Black people, for all Latinos, how can you say that when those policies are affecting them? Of course you can't. So the kind of wokeness they always, are resorting to is the empty kind, the kind that, oh, look, we have the most diverse CEOs in the corporations, that are exploiting you. We have the most diverse cabinet. When Biden was announcing his cabinet, it was just like an endless sequence of like, the first, Asian American woman.
Tokenism.
Tokenism.
That's the word. It's tokenism. It has nothing to do. We have a person who fits this category. That's tokenism. They use the term diversity, but diversity implies diversity of thought, diversity of ideology, diversity of idea. So they imply that if we bring in a woman and a Latino and this and that, I mean, come on, could you be more diverse than the Bush administration? Gonzalez and Condi Rice and all that. What do you know? They were diverse. But so they imply that if they give you tokenism, groups, do you want a neoliberal warmonger that's white? Would you prefer a gay neoliberal warmonger? Would you prefer a trans? How about a short one? How about a tall one? You're getting neoliberal warmongering. We're just got to try to find the right package to get you to be a sucker enough to say, I'll take it, neoliberal warmongering, as long as I get it in that right package. That's the game plan. And that's the discussion. And see, again, when you get back to Nina Turner, when she starts off with, when somebody says, Garland, I think you're wrong. Oh, so you say that to a Black man who's 5'11" and weighs 187 pounds. What the hell does that have to do? That's basically what she did. Oh, you say that to, and let me give you a description of myself. A woman who this and that and blah, blah, blah. And all that is irrelevant. It's illogical. All that is, she is building the woke game. She is playing. And you know what? Here's the sad, pathetic thing about this is what's really pathetic about her. And again, I don't dislike Nina Turner. I've met her before. I like her. But I feel sorry for her. Here's why. What did they do to her? What did they do to her? They screwed her over. It's not, I mean, come on. At least, Hunter Biden's getting crack and hookers out of the deal. I may not think that's the best thing for him, but he's getting something out of the deal. And Nina Turner's like, hey, I'm going to do all this. You ain't even getting paid. He's getting money. He's getting bad things, but he's getting something. He likes that. And what happens to you? Nina Turner, they literally bring in all of this dark money. But who did it? A bunch of rich people got her tossed out. And afterwards, she blames the money. Afterward, she's like, yeah, this money took me out. Really? The money did it? It just woke up and just jumped in. You know what? It's like somebody beats the hell out of you with a baseball bat and you make excuses for the person who was holding the bat. What happened to you, Garland? I was just laying there and a bat just came out of nowhere and started hitting me in the head. Well, what about the guy that was beating you up with the bat? Oh, he's a great guy. Love that guy. We got to look out for him. It's the bat that's the problem. And that's what she literally did, said the dark money is the problem. And she defended the people who use the dark money to take her out, which means what? She's a tool for the system. She is defending the corruption of the system, even when it's used against her. How pathetic is that? I feel sorry for Nina. Again, I don't hate her. I feel sorry for somebody who's so pathetic that they're in a position they will drop to their knees and be slapped around and beaten and spit on and thank the person that does it and defend the person that abuses them. That's a sad state of affairs for poor Nina Turner. She's fallen a long ways.
And, like the real tragedy of Nina Turner, and I even like considered her a friend, like for a time, like when we were working together around the People's Convention, we made her the keynote speaker of the People's Convention, but the moment that House, she could not wait. The moment that House seat opened up, she couldn't wait to go back into the Democratic Party, and then that was one thing. And then that back to back with that was the fact that Force the Vote happened that December of 2020. And, and I spoke with Nina, she called me, we spoke on the phone. I said, Senator, you should really support Force the Vote. This is our moment to, we said we were going to push the Biden administration to the left. That was the whole thing. Vote for Biden, then push him to the left. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Getting a floor vote on Medicare for all is literally like the bar is on the floor. Like that is the least thing. You should be demanding that they implement it immediately, but this was just bring it to a vote, And what Nina said to me was, she said, oh yeah, I support it. But I'm gonna, I'm gonna defer to the squad. I'm not gonna, they got their own considerations, in the House, and I'm just gonna go along with them, And I said, this was your opportunity to go in there as someone with and bring some backbone. You talk about the three bones, and one of them is the backbone. This was your opportunity to go in there and bring some backbone to the squad, and show people that in fact, there can be someone who stands for something in the Democratic Party, because none of the squad members, none of the progressives were standing up for a floor vote on Medicare for all. But she didn't do it, she didn't do it. And then worse than that, like you pointed out, Garland, it just turned from, injury to insult, because then immediately after that, she loses her first race, and then the second time, the CPC and the squad don't even endorse her. They don't even back her. In fact, on the CPC, they unanimously voted, every single one of them, against endorsing her and for Chantel Brown, the corporate Democrat. So what kind of self-respecting progressive or populist can stay in that party, when you're doing that, and then defend them? I mean, it reminds me of this guy that was shot in the face by Dick Cheney and then apologized to him. Anyways, I don't know if anybody else had anything else they wanted to say about that.
Well, did you have something to say, Karen? I don't want to.
No, I mean, I feel like this is a subject that we could probably talk about all night. The only thing I wanted to say, because obviously now that she's going to have a show on TYT, I guess, and I feel like, if she's got some integrity left, maybe Jimmy could be her first guest. Maybe a conversation instead of just smearing back and forth.
Yeah, that's TYTs for the people that can't, they haven't shilled quite enough to get a job on MSNBC.
Right.
So they're, the bottom feeders. It's like, nah, you haven't worked your way up to MSNBC. So start at TYT. You work there for a while, and if we approve of what but they're never going to let her up. You know what? No. I actually feel worse about a person like Nina Turner than I do about Pelosi. And I don't mean because Pelosi's out there, let's face it, you know what I mean? She's getting hers. She's getting paid. We know what she's all about. Her husband's out there all doing all their thing, and they are making big cash. And we can see the corruption. It's obvious, no shame in her game, right? And here you have Nina Turner, who I believe somewhere in her mind wants to do the right thing. I really do. I don't dislike her. But the way she's doing it is she's like trying to crawl, instead of speaking truth to power, she's trying to crawl up to power. She's trying to play by whatever rules they give her, hoping that if she plays by the rules that they give her, that somewhere in out of the kindness of her heart, every now and then they'll drop her a crumb. And they'll say, okay, you can come in and you can be a member of the Democratic Party and you can ride around in the nice cars and be on Capitol Hill and get interviewed and stuff like that. You're never going to get any legislation passed. You're never going to accomplish anything, but you can sniff the holes of power. And it's almost like she's like, yeah, I guess that's enough. I guess I'll take that. And the sad thing is this. She ain't even getting that. There ain't no difference between us who after this, they'll call us Russian bots, Iranian bots, China lovers. You know, they'll call us everything, Venezuela, Maduro supporters, whatever, right? They'll call us anything that in their world is bad. I'd rather be me, sitting on the outside, giving a finger, screw you guys, you're screwing us all, and I can't stand you, than the person who's standing around in a pathetic way on their knees, begging their way in to the halls of power. I believe the people in power have less respect for her than they do for the four of us. They'll look at us and they'll say, you know, I don't like you guys, but you kind of are telling the truth because we know we're screwing everybody and we'd prefer that you don't say it. But at least you got enough guts to say it. And they're looking at her. They got no respect for her. They're like, oh, isn't this pathetic? She's crawling up to our feet again. Ooh, get off of me. It's like, you ever see, I remember when my daughter was little and I'd be walking, and this was a play game, and she'd like grab her arms around my like leg, and I'd be walking, dragging her. Oh, she thought that was so much fun. That's what she's doing. She's wrapped around these people's legs and ankle. They're walking down the street and she's just dragging behind them, begging, hoping somehow that they'll allow her into the club. Nina Turner, you ain't getting in the club.
No,
the only club you're going to get is the one they're going to beat you over the head with when they throw you out the door. TNT, that's high as you go, Nina Turner. You have reached the apex of your political career. You ain't getting no further. They hate your guts.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I just sort of feel like TYT is sort of like the CNN for progressives who haven't yet figured out that they're liberals.
And, you know, last thing I wanted to say too is another thing that it became so evident in that, you know, exchange between Nina Turner and Jimmy Dore that you know, that she had this kind of like attack, this prepackaged attack ready to go, you know, and that's why it's like, oh, no matter what the debate is or no matter what the argument is, like, I'm going to just launch this like assault. I'm going to say what I think about him, you know, as a racist right winger, you know, and that's how it like immediately turned into that, you know, from this conversation about the FBI into that, veered into that. And, you know, the reason is, and it's funny, because, you know, I actually spoke with Jimmy and I said, you know, Jimmy, you know what they're doing? You know, he spoke the day after this happened. They're campaigning against you. They're campaigning. They're terrified that you're going to run, and they're campaigning with these attacks. They're trying to smear you. And TYT, the same thing, saying, oh, Jimmy Dore is just looking for his next grift. You know, they're trying to set the ground, you know, for if he does run for president in 2024, because it's amazing how terrified they are of that, you know, and not just them. I mean, of all the people they could be attacking, you know, because Nina Turner has talked about potentially, you know, running for president. But of all the people you could be attacking, why are you attacking someone who is to the left of you? I mean, we have two corporate parties. We have Trump and Biden, you know, and you're here focused with TYT on attacking Jimmy Dore. It's just absurd, and it really reveals, you know, what you are. And I think it gets to what you said, Garland. It gets to that the establishment really is they have more respect and they're more threatened by those of us on this screen than by anybody who's working in the Democrat Party.
Well, that's a fact. And you know why? Because we're the ones that will expose them. See, the problem they got with us, they don't care about the rest of it. They can argue all day with the Republicans, but people like us will expose the truth. Nina Turner, I don't blame her. I mean, from the perspective of a neoliberal kind of person like hanger on or like her, what was she going to do? She had nothing else. It's like you get backed into a corner. Do I have any kind of weapons? You ever watch a Jackie Chan movie? Somebody comes after him, anything, he grabs the picture off the wall, he throws that at you. He grabs some plates, there's some fruit, he throws anything around him is a weapon, right? They teach that in martial arts. Anything around you is a weapon, right? She was backed into a corner and she was exposed. She had nothing. She had zero to defend herself. And Jimmy Dore was 100% on the money. She's like, oh crap, geez, I don't have you're racist. There we go. That's all I got. I'm a black woman, and you're bringing. And you notice the funny thing was, she knew it was going to be hard to call Jimmy Dore racist. So instead, she went for something else, anti-black. That's why you're bringing anti-black people on. And I'm like, well, she knew it was going to be a little tough to go racist. So she tried to lighten it up a little bit with anti-black. And I'm thinking to myself, what does that mean? I don't know what it means. Does anybody know what anti-black means? Perfect. That's why she used it, because you don't know what it means. She had nothing else. And again, that's the really dangerous part of the Nina Turners of the world. I don't care how well-meaning they are. What is she doing? She's reinforcing the neoliberal woke way of fighting and just attacking people, of diverting people away from issues of economics and issues of human need. And instead, it's like, now you're anti-black. And now we got to spend, I guess, a whole hour show trying to figure out what the hell anti-black means, because I read her tweet and I'm black and I don't know what it means.
Right. Exactly. Well,
and it helps all critical thinking. Yep. You take the smear, the label, the whatever, and it's like, oh, well, I don't need to, no critical thinking required. But
exactly.
We have held you for so long, Garland. Thank you for talking to us for so long.
I know, Garland. Thanks for being in this long. I don't think we said exactly how long it was going to be, but it was like implied an hour. But
well, thanks. I get to run in my mouth, so I hope I didn't over dominate.
No, we love it.
Just give you guys a chance to talk.
You're amazing.
Not at all. It's been amazing, and we're blessed here in DC because we get to we have you on the radio here, 89.3. But yeah, Garland, you are on News Views every Friday 6 p.m. WPFW 89.3 FM. Is there anywhere else people can find you?
Actually, so I'm on what is it, 105.5 every day from 6 to 8 p.m. That's Radio Sputnik in Washington, D.C. KPFK in Los Angeles on Mondays from 2 to 3 p.m. And that is Pacific time. And then so I'm on the 2 Pacific stations, and I'm working on a third, believe it or not. And of course, my YouTube show in Rock Fan.
Well, Garland, it's been amazing having you. Yeah, and so look forward to talking again.
Really nice meeting you, Garland.
It was wonderful meeting you all too. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So much.
Yeah. All right. So quick note to everybody: this is People's Podcast, and find us on YouTube. Please share the video. Go to peoplesparty.org to volunteer, sign up, donate, help us out, help build the party any way that you can. You can find us there. So we'll be back 2 weeks from now. And we're a fun episode. We should have another great guest there. So catch you all then.
Good night, everybody.
Night all.
Good night.